You want to be able to create amazing screenshots like this one or this one? Then don't worry, because you came to the right place, as I will show you all there is to know about how to create truly astonishing screenshots. And this video tutorial is brought to you in association with racedepartment.com. Before we dive into all the settings and all the secrets, there are steps you need to be aware of and that you should take if you want to photograph and work with a custom livery in Assetto Corsa Competizione. Because if you want to get the most out of a custom livery, you have to make an adjustment before you launch the game. What you need to do is you head into your Assetto Corsa Competizione folder structure in the Explorer, which is usually found in the Documents folder. You go into the Config folder, and what you then want to do is you open the menu settings.json file, and in this file you want to find the entry for the text cap. Usually this is set to 1, and what you do want to do is set it to 0 like I did it. And after you have done that, you want to head into the folder of the custom livery and make sure that you delete the _1 or even _2 DDS files and just leave the custom livery with the _0 DDS files. Now you have ensured that only the full resolution showroom texture, which is the _0 DDS file, is shown on track in replays, and that is crucial, especially if you want to do high quality screenshots and close-up shots of your custom livery on the track. The second most important setting is if you have a gamepad that you can use with your PC, for example like PlayStation, Xbox or whatever controller. You can set the gamepad to be used for ACC's camera in replays, and this is generally a really good idea because it opens up so much more options to like tilt and sway around the camera in the game. And to do that simple change, we again have to jump into the Assetto Corsa Competizione folder structure, into the config folder, and open up the camera settings.json file. And there you search for use gamepad for free camera, and you change the value from 0 to 1, which means yes. Then you just save it, and now you can use your gamepad in Assetto Corsa Competizione replays. Just an important side note, this makes actually using the keyboard in your replays impossible. Only the mouse can be used to strafe around and look around, but don't worry, it might be a bit challenging in the beginning to get used to the gamepad because the controls react a bit differently, but it is totally worth it. You will be able to tilt and rotate the camera so much better for some really cool shots of your car. And once you have set these changes, it's time to start up the game. Of course, the core of really good high quality shots and video clips are the video GPU settings. So the first thing we are going to do is head into the video settings of ACC, and a really important note here is make use of managing custom video presets, because it makes it so much easier to change between your normal drivers options, or if you're streaming, or if you want to do high quality replay cinematic shots. Of course, it all depends on what hardware you're using, but that necessarily doesn't have to stop you from going all in and crank it all up, because if you just want to create really beautiful photographs in the highest possible resolution, it actually doesn't matter if the replay is stuttering a little bit, because you will be working with paused replay screens for most of the time. So that means you can crank up the game to the limits, and the best way to do this is actually with the resolution scale. If you just use your highest possible resolution and then crank it up to the limit of like 200%, which is the maximum here in ACC, you will get an astonishing image quality, but depending on the graphics card that you're using, this will result for sure in some tremendous FPS loss and stuttering. Of course, the best way is to just crank everything up to the maximum and see how it performs for you, and then go with the settings that you deem okay for the things that you want to achieve. However, I found actually a really interesting solution since the latest patch, and that is the FSR. So I actually left all my other settings completely unchanged and just activated FSR with ultra quality and cranked it up to 80%. You can even go to like 90% so that it doesn't look too sharp, and then go from there. What it actually does is it helps you with the performance in the replays, but it makes the game look super sharp and super smooth, and really gives you an astonishing base for perfect screenshots or video cuts of your replay. However, please always feel free to try out what works best for you and what gives you the best results. And just as an example, let me show you my current video preset that I use for replay cinematic. With all of that said, it is now time to either jump into a single player or a multiplayer session and create the replay you want to take some amazing screenshots of, or just take an existing replay that you already have and get to work. So let's just say we have our replay ready. Let's just jump in and let me show you all the settings you need to be aware of and how you can get the most out of the new patch 1.8 camera and Cinema HUD settings that ACC is featuring. So once we are in our replay, we can just let it run or pause in the background and switch to the free camera, which you find with F7. Now I'm using a PlayStation controller, which is really easy to connect with the PC. And you can see that with the R1, R2 and L1, L2 buttons, you can move the camera up and down or tilt it in various different directions. Now the first thing to keep in mind here is in free camera with the middle mouse button you open the Cinema HUD and you need to decide if you want to follow a car or not, and you find this under controls, because if you find a really cool camera position and then you decide, well, actually I don't want to follow the car, I just want to place the camera somewhere on the racetrack and let the car fly by, it will reset the camera position that you just did. So always decide before. And then we still have the classic camera controls, and I actually still make use of these in terms of the field of view. I recommend using something around 30 between 40, which in my opinion gives the best results. And then we can actually ignore the rest and head to the new depth of field effect. So the first point is actually the aperture, which controls how much light is actually coming into the camera lens. And usually I think photographers are using somewhere around 2.8. And you just have to be aware that the more you increase the value, the sharper the picture gets, and the less the value, the more blur you have in the background. The other thing then is the focal length, which actually is the same as the field of view. You can just change it a bit more in detail here. The most interesting and most important thing is the focus distance that switches between near and far, and that controls the sharpness, the focus point where you want to focus. So for example, if the car is far away, you have to select the focus distance far, and then you just have to play around with the slider here and see how much further the focus is. You can, for example, focus behind the car. And for example, watch what happens if I decrease the aperture even further in this case. The background blurs out even more, and if I increase the value, it gets a bit sharper. So the only real trick here is now to try and balance and experiment on what you want to achieve. So the near focus distance is actually only going to be really useful when you get very, very close to the car and want to do some really nice close-up shots, for example. You can photograph a lot of the details, because if you see, the slider here is very, very narrow in the options on how to focus. Now when you got a really nice angle, you can just let it run at a higher speed or lower speed to make use of the motion blur, and always do the screenshots with F12. And as I said, the gamepad controls can be tricky, so depending on the field of view you use, the angle or the speed, it can be really a challenge to navigate. Don't get frustrated, just get used to it, take your time and experiment with the angles. Also try experiment with the speed of the camera, the speed of the replay, and just find the perfect angle for your shot. So now that I explained all my settings and show you how you can start doing your own screenshots, the most important rule actually is try out something new, experiment, and just go totally crazy. Pick a replay, jump into the free camera, and then find the angle that you enjoy most. There are no limits, there are actually no rules, and it all depends on what you want to achieve. Do you want to achieve the most realistic outcome and make it look like a realistic photograph, like from a real track day? Then my suggestion is take a look on Google, for example, find photographers who are attending GT World Challenge track days, for example. There are a lot on Instagram, Facebook, social media, and pick a screenshot, pick a photograph that you enjoy and try to recreate it. There is a lot to learn about the different angles that they use and the focus points, the lighting and the colors, which is also important for the post-processing part. And if you just want to experiment, the game offers so many different options to find a cool angle for either close-up shots or wide-angle shots or huge motion blur and action shots. And especially the lighting and the night shots. So your imagination can completely run free, and whatever you want to create, just give it a try. If you want to create a specific replay with specific daytime and lighting conditions, you have to be aware that the sunrise time for most of the tracks is usually between somewhere 6 or 7 a.m. in the morning, and the easiest way to find it out is in single player. Just do a practice session, and then I can recommend you using a time multiplier for, like, example 2 or even 4 times, because if you then go out on track, do a few laps, you can see the time will pass way faster, and you can see how the sun behaves and how the light changes, and that actually makes it a bit easier for you to create that perfect screenshot. Also, the time for sunsets differs from track to track because of the geographic location. For example, Suzuka has an earlier sunset than other tracks, so the same. Jump into a game, check out the time from around 7 to 8 p.m, maybe a bit later, set the time multiplier a bit higher so that you don't have to restart it all the time. Really cool is also doing night shots. And the best way is then to do night shots with clear cloud cover. So like set the cloud cover to 0%, set the time to midnight to have a clear sky. And then just, for example, Suzuka is brilliant because of the huge Ferris wheel and the background. Kyalami is great, Mount Panorama is great because of the mountain view, and just try that. It's really incredible how much you can do in post-processing then with night shots and make them as realistic as possible. And now that we talked about post-processing, let's jump into the last chapter. So in terms of post-processing, I'm using Lightroom, which is actually a software that also I think a lot of real photographers are using. But you can use any editing software for pictures because the settings are most of the time the same, and the options and the base options that you need are the same. So let me just show you a tiny bit on what you need to be aware of and how you can edit a picture. So we are now in Lightroom, and it all depends on what your goal is. Do you want to achieve a very realistic looking picture? Do you just want to up the color, saturation, or do you want to go completely crazy? Everything is possible. So in my example, we have the original screenshot from Assetto Corsa Competizione with a beautiful sunset. And if we just check out on what I edited is, I most of the time like to use the automatic option in Lightroom and then just, do some quick edits. But as you can see, Lightroom is always adapting the lights, the depths, white, black, and the exposure settings, as well as dynamic saturation. Those are like the most important points if you want to go for more color, more saturation, and as well as a clarity. And yeah, what you usually want to do is you want to aim for a clean, saturated look. At least this is what I try, and you can quickly do this via changing the dynamic. You can see how the values are changing here, and you can totally go crazy, or with the saturation. So just depending on what you want to achieve. And again, there is like no right or wrong way. If you want to achieve a realistic look, look at realistic photographs and just try and get there with these settings that I just suggested to you. And here's an example for a night shot, which is just really amazing in Assetto Corsa Competizione, how realistic you can make the game look at night with just slight additions to dynamic saturation and pulling down the white in the picture. And here we have another example at a different daytime with different lighting conditions. Again, showing you the original picture from Assetto Corsa Competizione and then the edited, fully automated with just slight adjustments. You can again see that the depths, the lights, white, black, and dynamic and saturation are edited. We can then play around maybe a bit with the clarity and just like, it all depends on how far you want to go. But again, another example of how different you can make the screenshots look and pop out. So again, depending on what you want to achieve, use any editing software that you have at hand, no matter if it's Lightroom, Photoshop, GIMP, or any other free solution. They all have the most important points, which is exposure, contrast, saturation, colors, blacks and whites, to just bring out whatever you want to achieve in the picture. And again, feel free to experiment and go crazy. You already have experiences with other programs or software, feel free to just please share it in the comments below, share it with the community, because this is the glory of Simracing community. We support each other and we can help each other out to achieve even greater things together. And now all I have to say is thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave a thumbs up. That's the easiest way to support the channel. If you haven't done so far, consider subscribing, ring the sub notification bell to not miss out any other upcoming content, and catch me live on stream. Thank you so much, take care and stay safe out there. I'll see you soon.